Is abortion immoral? Position taken, yes, by Laura Castells-Ortlieb. A historical background on abortions. In the 19th century, a woman living in the United States was allowed to terminate a pregnancy as long as it was before she could feel the fetus's movement. In the 1820s and 30s, women relied on hazardous drugs to expel a pregnancy. By the 1850s, the American Medical Association began lobbying to make abortions illegal, primarily because physicians wanted to eliminate their competitors, which were mostly midwives and those who relied on homeopathy. In 1869, Pope Pius XI declares that termination of a pregnancy at any stage would mean excommunication from the Catholic Church. By 1873, the U.S. Congress enacts the Comstock Act, mandating that the hazardous drugs women were using, as well as any forms of contraception, would now be illegal. This law also made it illegal for the distribution of devices and medications through mail order and imports from overseas. Roe versus Wade. In 1969, Norma McCorvey, a woman in her early 20s, becomes pregnant for a third time. Although abortions are legal in her home state of Texas, the law only covers a woman if her life was in danger of carrying the pregnancy to term. In 1970, lawyers for Ms. McCorvey file court documents to petition for options for women seeking to terminate a pregnancy. They file the papers as Jane Roe versus Henry Wade. Mr. Wade was the district attorney for Dallas at that time. The Texas District Court rules in favor of Jane Roe, citing that the state's abortion restrictions violated a woman's right to privacy. Dallas District Attorney Henry Wade vowed that he would still continue to prosecute physicians who terminated a pregnancy when the female was not in danger of losing her life. The case is then taken to the U.S. Supreme Court. By 1973, the United States Supreme Court rules that a woman seeking to terminate a pregnancy is no longer a criminal or acting in a criminal manner. Roe v. Wade also allowed women their constitutional right to a safe and legal termination of an unplanned pregnancy. So what are some important questions on abortion? Is abortion immoral? This is not to be confused with the legal or illegal question. Is ending the existence of a human fetus considered immoral? Does a human fetus have value? Does a human fetus have legal rights? The unborn fetus and intrinsic worth. On what moral grounds is the mother able to determine the unborn fetus's value or worth? Because the fetus is inside of the mother's body, but it is not the mother's body. A fetus is a living being with the potential to become a human being. I think everyone would agree that killing a newborn baby is morally wrong, but yet killing a baby yet to be born is not morally wrong. This doesn't make sense. Does the fetus have any value and or rights? Yes, because there are many living things that have value and or rights. For example, your family pet, animals in the zoo, marine life such as whales, the coral reefs, sharks, etc. Dilemmas and problems in the theoretical and practical arenas. The argument that a human fetus is not a person as defined by the law, but it is a scientific fact that a human fetus is a living organism. What about the rights of the mother? Does she have a moral obligation to carry a pregnancy to term when she does not wish to? If we believe that a human fetus is not a living organism and does not have any intrinsic worth or value, then the argument can be made in favor of the mother's rights. However, because most people believe that an unborn fetus has infinite potential or intrinsic worth, a termination of pregnancy could be regarded as a homicide. Abortion and Kant's deontology. A hypothetical imperative is what guides us provided we have relevant desires. A categorical imperative is what guides us regardless of whether or not we have relevant desires. The categorical imperatives are only possible because mankind has intellect and the ability to reason. The textbook uses a quote from Kant that states, "Act only according to that maxim by which you can at the same time will that it should become a universal law." This quote is followed by the question, would you allow your rule to be followed by all people at all times? If the answer is yes, then the maxim is acceptable, but if not, then it is considered prohibited. If Kant were alive today and used his deontological theory, then one could make the moral argument as to why abortion should be legalized, because many rational individuals feel that it is not immoral to abort a fetus that has been conceived as a result of non-consensual sex, or if the mother's life is in grave danger. However, this theory doesn't necessarily entirely cover the moral aspect of abortion. After all, Kant also believed that human beings had value and were, quote, above all price. In other words, Kant felt that human beings were irreplaceable. Abortion and Utilitarianism. Chapter 8 of our textbook, titled The Elements of Moral Philosophy by James Rochelles, discusses what is meant by utilitarianism, a theory that was developed by 19th century philosophers Bentham, Mill, and Sidgwick. In utilitarianism, the moral part of an action is reliant on the outcome. What will the consequences be? Does the outcome involve greater happiness, or does it involve lesser happiness? And lastly, in utilitarianism, everyone's happiness is considered to be on an equal level. Therefore, utilitarianism believes that an action is moral if it produces the greatest amount of happiness over unhappiness. To Bentham, Mill, and Sidgwick, abortion might be considered morally wrong, but only if we included the unborn fetus's happiness as equal to the parent's happiness. Mill supported Bentham's principle of utility by writing in his book titled On Liberty the following: "The only purpose for which power can be rightfully exercised over any member of a civilized community against his will is to prevent harm to others. His own good, either physical or moral, is not a sufficient warrant. Over himself, over his own body and mind, the individual is sovereign." Therefore, an assumption could be made that for a traditional utilitarian, an abortion, or rather a law prohibiting an abortion, is an unjustified restriction on a person's ability to have control over their life. If this is the justification, then an abortion is not immoral to a utilitarian. The social contract theory, Hobbes and Rousseau. What makes us moral, according to Thomas Hobbes, is a rational human being who is able to determine the best course of action to solve a problem. That course of action must allow a human being to flourish, and therefore an organized, peaceful social order is necessary for this to occur. Rousseau believed that when we enter into relationships with others, we must push aside our own wants, needs, and desires in order to accept policies or a system of policies that benefit mankind as whole. The social contract theory might confirm that abortion was immoral only on the basis of rational people accepting this ideology under the condition that everyone accepts this as well. But can we expect everyone to respect the sanctity of a living human fetus? Unfortunately, we cannot. According to Professor Tuncel's lecture on Jean-Jacques Rousseau, he writes in Section 5 on the right of life or death, "We are in the social compact for the preservation of our lives, and under the command of the sovereign, we are ready to die for it. Therefore, when a malefactor attacks the social compact in any way, he ceases to be a member of the compact or of the state. He will be treated either as a rebel or as a traitor by the sovereign. Exile or capital punishment will be inflicted. Only the sovereign has the right to pardon the criminal, and only the sovereign has the right to make life and death decisions for the citizens." So this should shed light on contemporary debates on capital punishment, abortion, and euthanasia from a Rousseauian perspective. Therefore, if the social compact is a preservation of life, abortion would be morally wrong in Rousseau's social contract theory, and a woman who chooses to have one is ceasing to be a member of the social compact. A woman would not have any right to choose an abortion because only the sovereign would have the right to make such a decision. As I leave you with this statistical information, I will also explain my own personal position and conclude this presentation. As a Catholic born and raised in the Church, I believe abortion to be immoral, because my religion teaches that we are only stewards of this life that God gives us. We must respect the life we are given. Therefore, abortion, suicide, and euthanasia are wrong and forbidden, with no exceptions to this rule. Taking this class has opened my eyes as to how abortion has become legal since 1973. But for me personally, the various philosophical theories cannot convince me that abortion will ever be morally correct. For a list of the resources and the works cited, I have listed below all of the presentations that I have used from the professor as well as our textbooks. Thank you.